Hey, thank you everyone for joining us today for today's webinar on Project Outcome 101. This is an introduction to Project Outcome for both public and academic libraries. And today we'd like to extend our thanks to OverDrive Professional for sponsoring our webinar. OverDrive Professional is a division of OverDrive, the leading digital reading platform for a growing network of 65,000 libraries and schools in 84 countries. OverDrive serves hundreds of colleges, universities, government agencies, nonprofits, corporations, and religious organizations, and we're grateful for their support of Project Outcome. My name is Sarah Gurk. I am Program Manager at PLA. And with me today, you heard from Gina Parsons-Diamond, Program Officer at ACRL, and we also have Nellie Barrett, Program Officer at PLA, who will be manning the chat. So for those of you who are new to Project Outcome or need a quick refresher, Project Outcome is a free toolkit designed to help libraries understand and share the impact of essential library services and programs. It provides simple surveys and an easy-to-use process for measuring and analyzing outcomes. Project Outcome also provides libraries with the resources and training support needed to apply the results and advocate for the library's future. So if you haven't signed up yet, you can do that now. It is quick and easy. It's projectoutcome.org for public libraries or acrl.projectoutcome.org for academic libraries. And today's webinar will be recorded, and we will share the recording with you afterwards and also add it to the Project Outcome site. So you can always review later if you miss anything. Today, we're going to talk about what outcomes are and why they matter for your library. We'll walk you through the basics of using the Project Outcome Toolkit, and we'll share a couple of case studies as examples of how other libraries are using Project Outcome for improvements in advocacy. We want to make sure we answer all your questions and help you prepare to use Project Outcome at your library. So do type your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll have a couple of pauses for questions throughout the presentation. So let's start with a couple quick definitions for what we mean when we talk about measuring impact and measuring outcomes and why these things matter for your libraries. So we've seen for years that libraries have gauged success through their patron stories and for information about usage, things like gate counts, web traffic analytics, anecdotal evidence. But as time has passed, things have changed, and we know that libraries need a lot more data and evidence to help them show their impact and make the case for additional support. Assessment or evaluation can be easier said than done, and it does present a number of challenges, particularly because each library has its own needs, and often there are limited time and resources to devote to data collection and analysis. There can also be a lack of understanding about what to measure or why. So sometimes we measure what is easiest, or we don't sufficiently consider what it really matters to measure. And we do see libraries struggle to realize the full potential of assessment. Some of that is because of the challenge of initiating and managing the process, while others may struggle to collect and use the data effectively. So we'll be sharing a few tips for strategic measurement later in the session today that can help you address some of those challenges. Outcomes are just one type of impact measurement. The definition we use for Project Outcome is that an outcome is a specific benefit from a library program or service. It can be quantitative or qualitative and is expressed as changes an individual perceives in themselves. Outcomes answer the question, what good did we do? Or another way of putting it is, how have learners changed as a result of our interactions? Outcomes are not focused on recording library offerings or library usage, things like collection counts, gate counts, number of reference interactions, and so on. But they document how the library impacts the learning and work of its users. So these outcomes should be meaningful, achievable, observable, and actionable. There are many other ways you can also measure your impact, and you may already be doing so, and these can be complementary. So measuring outcomes doesn't mean you stop doing other types of assessment. Outcomes are just one piece of the puzzle. Different types of impact measurement can help you understand different questions you might seek to answer. So needs assessment help answer the question, what does our community need? Satisfaction surveys can help you answer, what should we do better? Outputs can help answer, how much did we do? And outcomes, as I said, help answer the question, what good did we do? So adding outcome data to your impact story can help you drive decision-making and strategic planning. And this is where Project Outcome comes in. With any data you collect, it's important to think about why you're collecting it and what it can help you achieve. And evidence from both public and academic libraries has shown that Project Outcome helps libraries with programming decisions, advocacy, funding requests, grant work, and building and developing partnerships. So you might have some of these ideas in mind as you're starting your work on Project Outcome, and that can be really useful in figuring out how to strategically target your outcome measurement. So Project Outcome is designed to help you overcome some of the common assessment barriers and engage more effectively in outcome measurement. It gives you a consistent and convenient way to measure outcomes and data that you can use to advocate for your library. So how are we doing that? The Project Outcome Toolkit offers a number of advantages and tools that can help you with outcome measurement. It's based around a set of quick and simple surveys. You can use these straight out of the box, or you can also choose to add custom questions. You administer the surveys through an easy to use survey management portal where you can collect and enter survey data. Once you have some data in the system, you get ready-made reports that the system generates, and you can also customize data reports yourself. There are a whole host of interactive data dashboards that also provide you with benchmarks to see how your library is doing compared to your peers. And all of the resources and training materials we've created to help libraries engage in the outcome measurement process are also available on the site, and we keep adding to those. So if there's questions that you don't see answered there, we can always develop new resources. And there's a peer discussion board where you can ask questions and share examples of what works or doesn't work for you. So this combination of ready-to-go surveys and easy-to-use tools can really help library staff save time and energy in planning data collection, and that leaves you more time for decision-making and advocacy once the results are in. And I just want to reiterate that all of these surveys, tools, and resources on Project Outcome are free, and they're available to all academic and public libraries, as well as LIS students everywhere. So how do we do this? Project Outcome is based on a set of simple standard surveys that were developed by and for the library field. Since public and academic libraries offer different types of programs and services, the survey topics available to you will differ based on your library type. And of course, how you use them will differ as well. So for public libraries, there are 8 survey topics available: digital learning, early childhood literacy, health, summer reading, economic development, job skills, civic and community engagement, and education and lifelong learning. Academic libraries have 7 survey topics: instruction, research, events and programs, teaching support, library technology, digital and special collections, and space. And each of these surveys comes in 2 types: immediate surveys and follow-up surveys. As the name suggests, the immediate survey is designed to be used immediately at the end of a particular program or service, and follow-up surveys designed to be used after some time has elapsed. Before you decide which survey topic and type you'll use, you can look at the actual survey questions in the resources, preview all the questions, and see which ones will get you the type of data that you need. So all of the surveys are designed to capture 4 key outcomes: knowledge, confidence, application or behavior change, and awareness. There are 4 quantitative questions that get at those outcomes, and then each survey also has 2 open-ended questions that help you get the most out of your patrons' feedback. They ask, what did the patrons like most about the program, and what can the library do to improve? And these open-ended questions we've seen are really invaluable to libraries. This is often where they gain insight into how to help patrons specifically and gather qualitative evidence that can help them demonstrate their value in the community. So what does this look like? This is the Education and Lifelong Learning Survey, the immediate survey for public libraries. It's probably the most generic of all the project outcome surveys. It can be used for really a broad range of programs. The text in bold here indicates how the questions align with those 4 outcome measures that I just shared. So the first 4 quantitative questions use a Likert scale for responses, so from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And again, this is the standardized survey as it's available in the toolkit. You can also add up to 3 custom questions to any of these surveys. And I want to emphasize that you set the context for the survey when you administer it. So your patrons or students, they know what it is they're being asked about. You can write a custom introduction to the survey, and also, just when you hand out the survey itself or the link at the end of your program, you'll say, this is about today's class or today's program that you're responding to. All the surveys are available in English, Spanish, and French. If your library has translated a survey into another language, and if you're willing to share it with us, we can encode that translation in the toolkit and make it available to others as well. So we'd be happy to have those translations in other languages if you are using the surveys in other languages. For now, the default is just English, Spanish, and French. To choose the right survey, it's important to keep your library's needs and goals in mind. So look at the library programs and services that relate to your library's goals and think about which ones it would be useful for you to survey. You can review the survey questions to see what topic and type will get you the most useful data. And if there's additional information you need, you can consider adding those additional custom questions. You'll also want to think about how you survey. So if you're running virtual programs, you'll probably want to use the online survey link. For in-person programs, you can either print the surveys or share a link or QR code with participants. You can share the survey directly by giving it to program participants at the end, such as either by sharing a link or a paper printout, or you can share it indirectly, such as by posting it on your library's social media page and asking anyone who may have participated in a program to complete the survey about it. It's also important to consider how you frame the survey request in order to encourage participation. So it can be helpful to emphasize the importance of feedback, and you can emphasize that the survey is short. As you make changes based on feedback that your library receives, you can also share that those changes were the result of patron feedback, which can help encourage more feedback in future. Okay, so I'll pause for a minute and just make sure I didn't miss questions in the chat. And we'd also love to hear from you. So if you have questions or if you're starting to think as you hear this so far about what programs or services you might evaluate at your library, I'd love to hear those questions and ideas in the chat. So please share in the chat. Okay, there's a question from Sean about the possibility of creating a survey to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is possible that we could create new survey topics in future. I know PLA is field testing a new survey topic at this time. For both PLA and ACRL, that is up to the committee that oversees the toolkit. So I know for that topic in particular, that's something the ACRL task force did discuss, but decided to address not through a topic, but through training in different ways. But again, these things change and we can always add more as time goes on. All right, seeing a few questions come in here. Question, how do you recommend avoiding survey fatigue? Do you survey after every program? This is something we'll talk about a little bit more as the presentation goes on, but I think the general piece of advice here is you don't need to survey after every program. You want to survey strategically, so pick programs maybe that are new or that you've never surveyed before, and think about where it's critical for you to get that feedback. Okay, strategic planning I will come back to as well. That's one of our case studies that we have coming up later on, so I'll come back to that question. What's the difference between patron satisfaction versus outcomes? In the simplest terms, satisfaction just asks, did you like this? Maybe. It's like those smiley face buttons you sometimes see like at airports. That's a satisfaction survey. Versus outcomes is really asking, what did you get out of this, right? What did you learn from this particular program? So it's a different type of reaction. Okay, lots of questions. It's great. I'll try to address a few more now, and we'll make sure then that we come back to anything we haven't addressed at the end as well. So a question about, can I sign up as an individual user, or does my library have to have an account and design library-wide surveys? So you sign up as part of your library, but you can have multiple accounts with your library. So you'll see other users that have signed up at your library, and you'll see activity at the library level. But it might just be one person at your library that has signed up, or you might have 10 or 20, however many might be engaged in this work. How long will registration for the toolkit be open? Forever, indefinitely. We're here, it's been available for about 5 years on the PLA side and just about 2 years on the ACRL side. So registration is open. Okay. Sorry, just scanning through all the questions here. Okay, for students looking for access on the ACRL site, you will see a student as an option when you go to sign up. So that will be an option in the registration process. It'll ask, do you work at a library? And you can say, I'm a library student, and that will give you a sort of test account. And there's no limit to the number of people that can sign up at a particular library, as many people as you would like. No limit to the number of surveys either. So good questions. I know I missed a couple. I will take another look and we will come back to them. But for the moment, I'm going to pass this over to Gina, and she's going to talk you through how you actually go about using Project Outcome.
Thank you, Sarah. As mentioned, I'm going to talk you through using the toolkit. So first, we're going to look at the account homepage. This is what you see when you log into your account. Once you create a free account, you'll have access to all the tools and resources via the user homepage. You can create multiple accounts per library or a single master account. It's your choice on how to do this. Next, we're going to go through the account management page. This is where you can see all the users affiliated with your library or institution. You can also see and edit locations, aka branch libraries or specialty libraries on your campus. This matters for the mapping functionality, and it also matters if you want to set a location when you create your survey. You can set a location without an address, but even for online events, you may want the event associated with the library location or branch that's hosting it. The survey management tool is where you'll go to create and access all your surveys. You'll also be able to customize your survey's program information, including program name and date here. You'll also be able to track program attendance and survey response rate, enter survey responses, review auto-generated reports, and download raw data. So this is where you can really get into the meat of your surveys. And to create a new survey, you just click on the orange button in the top left. To create a new survey, it just takes 5 easy steps. You must create a survey first to access the paper survey and online survey links, and to be able to enter results back into the system. Each new survey you create is based on a project outcome template with standardized questions. You aren't creating the surveys from scratch, but you will have the option of customization, including intro footer messages and additional questions. The survey management tool will walk you through the process of creating a survey with a simple online form. Step 1 is choosing the survey topic or type. Step 2 is where you enter the program name, date, and location. The program name you choose is important because this becomes a data filter later on. For example, at an academic institution, if you wanted to survey all of your English 101 programs, you would want to create a program name called English 101. And then you'd be able to roll up all those individual surveys into a single report later on. Step 3 is to enter a survey name. Here's where you will also have the option of adding custom intro and footer messages or a custom redirect link for when the survey is completed. Step 4 is where you can add up to 3 additional custom questions. You can choose from a pre-populated list of additional survey questions, some multiple choice and some open-ended, or you can write your own. The downside of adding custom questions, and the reason you see the recommendation against it, is that they make the survey longer, which can decrease response rates. And then all that's left is step 5 to administer your survey. And again, all these surveys are available in English, Spanish, and French. Here's just a quick look at what the finished surveys will look like. You can administer them via paper surveys or online. The online surveys are mobile friendly, and you can embed them into your library website or LibGuide. Once a survey is created, you can make changes via the survey detail page. The changes you make can be limited if you have already begun to collect responses. This page is where you can also find the links to the PDF or online versions of your survey, and you can get the embed code here as well. If you wish to enter program attendance, you can do that on the top right, and Project Outcome will be able to calculate the survey response rate. We have several ways of collecting and entering survey responses. If you administer your survey electronically, the patrons fill out the survey online and the data is automatically uploaded back into Project Outcome. You can enter survey responses one at a time yourself using the orange Enter Responses Online button. We also provide a bulk entry URL. This website looks like a spreadsheet where you can enter multiple rows of responses. This URL can be shared with people who do not have a Project Outcome account, for example, student workers, and they will be able to enter data but will not have access to the rest of the system. Finally, we offer a bulk upload Excel template where you can enter your data, being careful to match the formatting and upload it. These templates are unique to each survey you create. So if you're administering multiple surveys, you'll have to complete multiple bulk uploads. We know that administering surveys and entering data can be a pain, but what makes it worth it is what you can do with the results. The results are available in a variety of formats in Project Outcome, making it easy to review, interpret, analyze, and share your results. One format is the data dashboards, which show graphic visualizations of your aggregate survey data. All dashboards can be saved as screenshot images, printed as PDFs, or saved in the image library within Project Outcome, which allows you to add them into your custom reports. The data dashboard has multiple parts. The first is the overview dashboard. This shows an aggregate average score across all survey types and across all outcomes. Each survey topic and outcome shows comparisons of your library's average score in that category versus state and national average score. And you can see the overview dashboard in the top left here on your screen. The detail dashboard, which is on the bottom, is where you can view data for each individual survey question organized by survey. The results can be filtered and benchmarks are displayed. The matrix dashboard, which you can see here on the right, allows you to explore the data further, looking for relationships and correlations, and can also be used to drive decision-making and identify gaps in service or impact. The matrix diagram makes it possible to view aggregate average scores for each survey topic in connection with each outcome. The chord diagram that appears below the matrix table allows you to see your score relationships in a different way. The thicker the chord, the stronger the relationships between that particular survey topic and outcome. We also provide a map dashboard, which allows you to filter by outcome, survey topic, and custom demographic area, as well as a library info dashboard. The final dashboard, which was added in late 2020, is the qualitative dashboard, which allows you to visualize the most commonly used words from your open-ended responses. You will see one word cloud per survey topic, and you can select a program to narrow down the results. Click on a word to see its frequency and other words that commonly appear with it. These word clouds can give you a sense of overall trends in the open-ended comments. They're not a substitute for actually reading the comments or doing further analysis. For that, you'll want to export the open-ended responses and add them to your reports. So you can easily create reports in Project Outcome to share with library staff, management, or other stakeholders. The first kind of report is a summary report. The summary report captures results from a single survey and is designed for quick sharing with staff, managers, board, or other stakeholders. The easiest way to access the report is through the Get Report link on the Survey Management tool. Each survey has this link, and you just click one button and the report will appear fully ready for you. The Quick Report feature does allow you to add or export open-ended responses and can serve as a starting point to apply customizations. If you wish to build your own report and customize it to include multiple surveys, you can apply filters and add a custom statement from your library. You can create a custom report using the report builder in the data dashboards. You can also access the report builder by clicking the orange Build a Report button on the user homepage. By default, each report will show a quantitative summary of the data you selected. If you selected multiple surveys, it will also list those. And you can choose to add all or some of the open-ended responses. Additionally, you can customize your reports by adding additional pages with visualizations captured from the data dashboard and custom text. If you want to be able to access your raw data, we're going to go back to the Survey Management tool. Just locate the survey you wish to run a report for in the detail page and click on Download next to the number of responses. Alternatively, you can use the Survey Response Viewer to export all responses or select the responses you wish to download. The data will come out as a raw CSV file. The spreadsheet will include the library name, location, program name, program date, survey topic, survey type, survey name, response date, response type, and all quantitative and qualitative responses. The raw data is available as soon as the data has been entered, so you'll want to be cautious about downloading it while a survey is active. And that was our brief overview of the toolkit functionality. Before we move on to talking about implementation, I'm going to take a pause to see if you have any questions about the toolkit. And I see some have already come in.
I just want to address a couple of the questions that came in about privacy, if it's okay if I can jump in, Gina.
Oh, go ahead.
So as Nellie shared in the chat, the surveys are anonymous. So we actually explicitly request that you do not ask for any personally identifying information. Please don't ask for names, phone numbers, email addresses, that sort of thing in Project Outcome. What that means is for the follow-up surveys, you'd want to collect that information separately if you need it to be able to follow up with those patrons. So maybe you have a sign-up sheet for the program and you use that to send the survey link to those people that attended the program, but you're not actually collecting the follow-up information within Project Outcome to protect patron privacy. So all the surveys will remain, the results will remain anonymous. We do have access to the library data that is entered. So by we, I mean ACRL and PLA, but we would never share that data in any identifiable form. So we do report on aggregate data on usage to help us make the case for continuing to support Project Outcome, but we would never report on your library's data unless you choose to write a case study, for example, in which case you could share whichever results you would choose to share. Nellie, can you help us with other questions we haven't gotten to yet?
Yes, there were two I just saw that were from a couple minutes ago. One question about if there are sample surveys for young adults and children that might apply more for the public library side.
Sure. I'm not quite sure what's meant by sample surveys. For the summer reading survey, particularly for public libraries, for example, there's a different survey for children or young adults versus for caregivers. But those are not samples, they're the real thing. So you could take a look at the full list of surveys and options available in the resources, and that might help answer that question.
And I did see a question from Oscar asking about if, or maybe more of a suggestion about a QR code to be able to place a QR code on surveys. And that is something that PLA's committee has talked about and has discussed in the past. So that would be potentially a future addition to the survey or to the toolkit, but not something that we are implementing at this moment. And then another question for you, Sarah. Is there a way to use the survey across library systems? So to evaluate a program that many libraries are using?
Yeah, so if, I mean, I don't know the full circumstances in this particular case, but certainly if you're working like within a consortium or within a state, for example, we do have the option of creating group accounts. So you could get in touch with us if that's something you're interested in. It basically, it allows a group to create a template for a survey and then push that template out to all the libraries that are members of the group. And so the library uses the template as the basis for their survey, and the data is aggregated at the group level, if that makes sense. Otherwise, you know, if you're just maybe coordinating with one other library that you happen to know or happen to work with, I mean, you could just coordinate with them in terms of what questions you're asking and figure out how to collate your data later on. But group accounts might be a good option if you are working with lots of other libraries and want to make sure you're collecting all the data in the same format and in the same place.
I've seen a few questions come in that I can address. There's one, is there a widget that would allow for the data dashboard to populate in a LibGuide or a web page? This is a functionality that we're actively working on and hope to have launched in the next year or so.
Is that a question about the survey? Or, oh no, the dashboard.
The dashboards.
Okay. Yes.
In the reporting feature, can you run a report on all the surveys created in your institution or just the surveys you as a user account created? You will be able to run reports on all the surveys from your institution. Sorry, you might have to help me out with this one. Read diversity and equity. We were hoping to ask a full series of demographic questions in addition to the standard survey questions, but are prevented from doing this by the limit of only adding 3 additional questions. Have you considered lifting this restriction when it comes to demographic questions? No, we haven't. We really like to keep the surveys short to ensure high response rates. Additionally, we don't like to collect demographic information in the system due to privacy
Yeah, I think that's fair. I know it has come up certainly in committee discussions, but based on those considerations, the committee members have felt that it's worth keeping the limit in terms of survey length. A related question there was the one about asking for zip codes. I would think that would be general enough that it wouldn't become personally identifiable, but I don't know, maybe others have insight into that in terms of what is allowed or not at your library or what others have advised.
I see another question related to this. I might be confused by the screenshot, but if there's no zip code or location data, what is the map feature? You, as the survey administrator, can set the location for your survey, aka like the specific address of your library, and that would show up on the map feature. For example, if you're a community college who has several campuses across a county or region, you may wish to set all of your library locations so that you can compare location to location. And that is what the map functionality will do. It's not harvesting location data from the survey responses. I see a few more. This seems to be an academic question. Any plans to add a survey for online distance embedded library service? The instruction survey doesn't fit the bill, but is most likely what we would need. The project outcome for academic libraries editorial board has not discussed adding that type of topic, but if you'd like to send us an email, I'd be happy to add it to their agenda. Under the matrix section of the dashboard, what determines your library's peer type? Is this assigned by project outcome based on census data, or do you select this when you set up an account? I know on the academic side, you are grouped by Carnegie class, and that determines your peer data. I'm not sure about.
For public libraries, you should see state and national benchmarks. We are also in the process of adding peer groups, and we'll have more information on that shortly.
Looks like we have one more question before we move on. When looking at comparing data from all libraries, can you see the name of the programs other libraries are surveying for, like sewing or cooking classes? No, you can see data aggregated across survey topic type, either those 7 or 8 survey topics, depending on your toolkit, and the 4 outcome measurement guidelines, which are application and awareness, confidence, knowledge, and I'm forgetting the last one. So those are the 11 metrics that you can aggregate for.
And just one more question there about response rates. What is the average response rate to the surveys, especially for public libraries? So when you administer a survey, you have the option of adding an attendance figure. So if you know that 20 people came to your program, you could put that in, and then if only 10 filled out the survey, you have a 50% response rate. That is optional. So we don't have response rates for all the surveys. And off the top of my head, I don't know for those that we do have. We could calculate them for, I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. I think it varies a lot depending on library, depending on needs. It's not always necessary to have a very high response rate to get the sort of information that you need. And I think one of the case studies that we'll share in a moment will highlight that, but I can look it up and maybe we can share that later on. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to a couple case studies. We will have more time for questions, I think, at the end. We'll just spend a few minutes on the case studies and talking about implementation, and then we can be sure to address any further questions. So now you've seen how the tool works. I do want to share a couple examples of ways that you can use the data that you've collected. I have one example each from a public and an academic library, but I think the takeaways from these really can apply to any type of library and libraries of different sizes as well. So the first, from the academic side, this case study was written by the editorial board chair and former task force member Tiffany Garrett at Nevada State College. Their college and library are a little bit unusual in that it's quite new and the library has a physical space, but no physical collections. They decided to use the space survey to get feedback from students who had reserved their group study rooms. The space survey is only available for academic libraries. It is also designed to measure specifically the outcomes of learning spaces. So it's not for the library space as a whole or just any type of space. It's spaces specifically designed to facilitate learning within the library. So they administered it to students who had booked study rooms via their online calendar. Overall, they did get fairly positive results, but they saw a couple of key features to the results. One was that the awareness outcome was the lowest of those 4 key outcomes. And the second was that they realized that students were using the group study rooms, not for group study, but for individual study because they offered quieter spaces than the rest of the library. So this is what their results look like. This is from page 1 of a summary report. In this case, it's a 14% response rate. So it's only 22 survey responses, not a huge number of survey responses, not a very high response rate, but nonetheless, it gave them enough evidence that they were able to take this and take action. So it provided actionable feedback, and that is really the key here. They had done a correlational study in the past, a more research-oriented study, and they got positive results from that, but those results weren't actionable. So this combination of more specific feedback, even though it was only a small number of responses, it gave them something that they could take to their administrators and ask specifically for these things that could help solve these problems they were seeing come up in the feedback. So what did they do? As I mentioned, that awareness outcome was the lowest of the 4 key outcomes. So to address that, they improved the signage in the library. They specifically added digital signage, putting a rotating slideshow onto screens that were not in use to advertise library services. And they added table tents to the study rooms that promoted upcoming library events and resources so that students who are coming in to use the study rooms would get more information about the other things the library offered. To address the fact that individual students were reserving the group study rooms, they made a change to their reservation policies that explicitly allowed that, allowing single students to reserve some of the smaller study rooms for quiet study. Also to address that need for quiet spaces, they added additional soundproofing in the study rooms, and the sound absorbing panels resulted in a 30% reduction in noise based on decibel testing. They reduced noise overall, looking into other solutions such as changing the library entryway from an open space to a glassed off entrance that would reduce noise from other areas of the building. Their campus administration, at least at the time of writing this case study, was supportive of the project, but it had not yet been implemented. I'm not sure of the current status of that. Advocacy as well, they shared the results with the college student government organization and used them to advocate with campus administration for more quiet study spaces across campus. And as of summer of 2019, a library-led renovation project was approved to convert a nearby classroom into a quiet study computer lab. So again, not a huge amount of data, not a huge amount of feedback, but enough that it was able to produce actionable feedback. On the public library side, this case study from Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana, addresses ways that project outcome can be implemented into the strategic planning process. So they, in the process of developing a new strategic plan, established an outcomes-based framework for the development of all library services. It connects broad goals to demonstrable outcomes, which in turn relate to investments or activities that support the goals of the organization. This necessitated some education and support for staff to adjust to a new outward-facing approach to planning, service delivery, and evaluation. So staff were encouraged to ask, how will you know if the topic resonates with your community, or how would you adjust it so it meets your community needs over time? The library also takes a selective approach to surveying. So they focus on programs that may have gotten stale over time or on new programs that they're developing. So focusing their outcome measurement efforts on those programs where it's really key to get some feedback. They incorporate project outcome results into board updates, which are also made available to all staff. And this can help everyone better understand the library's impact. So even if I think you're not intending on using project outcome surveys in the immediate future, case studies like this can help you see how it's possible to maybe implement in a way that's useful for your library. And I just want to share one more piece from that Allen County Public Library case study, which is their advice for newcomers to strategic measurement and outcome measurement. And I think this touches on some of the points that came up earlier already. And number one, of course, is you don't need to survey everything. You can spend some time thinking about, where you need to learn more, where services might need improvements. Just pick one program perhaps to start with. So be strategic in terms of planning your outcome measurement. It might be helpful for you to use a logic model or something similar to think through the process. There are some resources on logic models in our outcome measurement guidelines and the resources in the toolkit. And what they do is they just help you plan your survey process and how you're using that evidence, what sort of assumptions you're making, the things that might influence the practice, and so on. You want to have a specific goal in mind for the surveys. We mentioned this at the beginning as well. What do you want to learn from this feedback, from this evidence? That way you're not burdening staff or attendees, program participants as well, by over surveying without any specific intended uses for that data. Give it time. So don't be discouraged if this seems like a lot at the start. Again, this might be new to you. It might be new to your patrons. So you might need some time to figure this out, and that's totally fine. For the surveys themselves, if you're having problems with response rates, you might want to consider an incentive. You don't need to go overboard, but even giving out a piece of candy or chocolate or sending thank yous, that sort of thing can help solicit additional feedback and get that feedback that you need for your library programs. Number 6 is a big one. Definitely look at those results, right? That's what makes it all worthwhile, is taking the time to review the feedback you get, especially those open-ended responses that can help you guide your program development and changes in the future. Make a plan, right? So this is, what can you do to act on now? What do you need to know? What do you want to change? So have an idea of where this is going. Follow up with your patrons if you need to. So if you get some good comments in the survey results, but not enough information, you can find other ways to get that information, right? Surveys are not the only option when it comes to assessment. So you could put up a flip chart in the library or a sign asking attendees to share more of their input with staff. There are lots of other ways that you can collect different types of feedback. And then I think this last one is really important as well, is share the results with your community. So whether that is your administration, your institution, your broader library community, let them know what you've changed and how you changed it. In this case, through getting feedback from your library patrons, users, and thank them for helping the library to provide a better service. I think people like to see that their feedback that they took the time to share has actually been used. And so that can be really powerful to share that. Okay, we're getting pretty close to the end, but just a couple more things here as you go back to work and start to think about implementing project outcome, or maybe expanding your use of project outcome. So some of the benefits here, we have seen that the short and simple surveys lead to higher response rates. So there is a benefit to keeping them short. Capturing this sort of snapshot data can help you make immediate improvements. Those open-ended comments, again, they can be really valuable. It's worth taking the time to read through them. The standardized outcome measures mean that you don't have to come up with a new survey every single time. It makes it easy to use out of the box. It also allows us to provide these aggregate national benchmarks that help you see how your library is doing compared to others. The ready-made reports and data visualizations do a lot of the hard work for you in terms of processing your data to make it easier for you to take action with your results. You can definitely work at your own pace, so pick and choose surveys based on your program needs, capacity, and learning objectives. Again, start small, start with one thing if this is your first time, and that's totally fine. And as you get more comfortable, then you can customize, add context, add custom questions, and create custom reports that highlight the information that you need. So you have a lot of options. It is important to think about the value of engaging in outcome measurement and what you're going to do with that data. So again, be thinking about what sort of actions you might take. And there might be others that are driven by feedback that you receive that you're not necessarily anticipating in advance. We do see libraries using this data for grant work, to make decisions about programming, to build or develop partnerships, for advocacy, and of course for funding requests, being able to ask for specific things that they need. We will share the recording of today's session. You can also find more case studies, recordings of past webinars, and a lot more resources in the toolkit. This is just an example here showing you where you would find the case studies. All users have access to all of these resources, and they cover every step in the outcome measurement process from planning through action. Many of the resources are the same across both the public and academic library sites, but we use different examples and use cases. One that I want to point out particularly is the project outcome roadmap. If you're just getting started with outcome measurement or just getting started with project outcome, this can help you track the steps you need to follow as you plan a new survey, enter your data, administer the survey, all the way through to taking action with results. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the process, this might be a good one to check out, and it can help you through every step. We also have the peer discussion board. So again, remember that you can ask others about how it works for their libraries. These discussion boards are open to all registered users. Ask your peers about how they're using the toolkit, or you can ask questions that we as project outcome staff might be able to answer as well. Okay, we are pretty much at the end. So I know I saw a couple more things coming into the chat. So I'll answer any questions that are still outstanding. We would also love to hear from you. So if you have ideas about how you're going to get started using Project Outcome at your library, if this is new, or how you might expand your usage, please do share those in the chat. And as we're waiting on those to come in, I'll just share as well. If you have further questions after today, definitely feel free to post in the peer discussion board or send us an email if there's something specifically we can help you with. Okay, Nellie, can you help me with questions?
Yes, we had a question from Aaron, and this might be geared more towards the academic side of things. Aaron says, given what we know about how problematic traditional course evaluations can be, considering women, BIPOC, and other marginalized groups, is there any way to alter the 6 questions to focus the questions on the learning of the student rather than whether or not they like something?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think actually the benefit of this sort of model is that it is focused on learning. That doesn't mean, of course, that bias doesn't come into it, but the questions do ask, did you learn something from today's program? Are you more aware of the library's resources? None of the standard questions focus on the presenter or the librarian, though you do sometimes see that come up in the comments. The questions are really, I think, focused on the program or on the library. And so that can be maybe helpful in terms of the type of feedback that you get, that it's asking, did you learn something from this program? Are you more aware of the library's resources? It's not asking, was the instructor effective? But yes, that is definitely an issue. And I think it's something to be aware of as you are reviewing the results that you get as well, that sort of bias might come into play.
Thanks. And then we have a question from Cindy that applies to both academic and public library workers. What is meant by having a specific learning goal in mind? And can you give an example of a learning goal?
Sure. So I think there's actually a resource that I think is available for both public and academics about setting goals. And I think this can be a challenge if it's something you haven't thought about before. But for example, if you're thinking about your library programming related to information literacy or news literacy, what's the goal of that program? The goal is to help people better engage or evaluate the news they're seeing, for example, right? So you want to improve how people understand or engage with online resources. I don't know, I'm making this up off the top of my head. I can't remember the examples in the resources, but that's the goal of your program. And so how do you then align your actual curriculum and the evaluation you're doing to see whether you've achieved that goal? So the goal isn't just get more students or more patrons to attend the program, because if you don't know whether the program is effective, having more people there doesn't necessarily help, right? So you want to actually know whether they are learning the right things from that program. And so the outcome measurement survey might be one way of doing that. There might also be other activities you could have them do that would help you gauge that, whether your programming is actually helping you reach that goal. So that's what I think that's probably what I meant when we talked about learning goals, that you want to have an idea of what the purpose, what sort of learning is supposed to come out of your programming from the start, and that will help guide the curriculum and the evaluation that you do as well. Right. Any other questions? I think we're pretty close to the end. So I just want to once again say I'd like to thank our sponsors at OverDrive Professional for today's webinar. We're very grateful for their support of Project Outcome, and thank all of you for attending the webinar as well. As you exit, you will get directed to a brief survey, and we would love to hear your feedback. So thank you for being here, and do please get in touch if you have any further questions.